Welcome to our risk management spreadsheet tutorial. Again, in the risk management lab, you are to create an Excel spreadsheet to answer the lab questions. You can choose your own format of spreadsheet, providing you do the following: answer all questions clearly, annotate your solution with clarifying information, allow for any of the input variables like cost to be modified, and I will give you your group's input variables the morning of the assignment is due by email to the group. These values must be included in the Dropbox submission. Thank you. Good day. We are talking about our risk management lab, and again the output of this is a spreadsheet that's going to identify the different scenarios as identified in the 6 questions we have for the assignment. In the spreadsheet, I would like you to start out in column 1A, identifying your group and your group members. In this case, we have group 5. Myself, Sally Smith, and Bob Builder are the members of the team. We have some variables here that we're going to input to this scenario. The first one is training room capacity, and in this case, I've specified a value of 40. The second variable we're going to enter is total number of trainees expected, ET, and for this location it is 100. We're also going to deal with the absentee days per employee, AD, and we've set that at this point to 4. The next value we're going to have is the trainee daily salaries, the DS, and we've set that to 160. Again, that's the salary we pay the employees that are actually coming to do the training. The next variable we input will be the temp replacement people for those who are being trained, TR, and again we've set that at a higher dollar value of $200. Again, they're on contract and only for the duration of the training session. We have the trainer cost, and again we've set that at $1,000 a day, and we have the calculation for total working days in a year, which happens to be 50 weeks times 5 days per week. We've taken 2 weeks off for vacations. Again, we have the $250 value. As we get into the spreadsheet, remember that any one of these values could be replaced, so they need to be referred to as an absolute variable in your formulas. I've also identified within the spreadsheet a colored cell which indicates the expected formulas for these solutions. So again, you'll have to have a formula behind that cell that's colored in orange. As we progress through questions, we've answered questions 1 and 2, and again you can modify the format, but I'm looking for the same kind of information to be presented fairly clearly and concisely. So you'll see here that we have training scenarios for questions 1 and 2. Again, this training scenario has us identified as training 33 on day 1, 33 on day 2, and 34 on day 3. In our spreadsheet, we've accounted for the possibility of transportation problems. So day 1 is not actually a training day, it's a pre-build day, and the only expense we have there is the $1,000 for the trainer who we've brought in early to make sure that they're not delayed by transportation. Again, we'll use this number to calculate our risk cost in a future exercise. You'll see that we now have day 2, day 3, and day 4, which represents the actual 3 days of training. We've identified the number of potential employees that will be trained on those days, 33, 33, and 34. We've done a calculation here to identify the potential absenteeism based on the 4 days per 250 in this sample, and we've calculated that per day. In the first case, we've done nothing to mitigate it, so we've lost 1 day of training for that individual. We have accounted for training and subsequent classes or methods for day 3 and day 4 here, or the second and third day of training. And again, you'll see across the bottom that we now have total employees trained. Again, I'm expecting notes beside each one of the items that you put in there explaining what you've actually done. In this case, we've calculated the total, and we've done by each day. So the total for the pre-training day would be the cost of the trainer, which in this case is $1,000. We have the total cost per day for the first day of training is $7,400 because we only trained 3,200 people at the 32 people at the cost of $200 per day. Again, day 3 we've trained 33, and that's going to come in at $6,600, and we've trained 34, and that comes in at $6,800. When we total them for the day, you can see that we now have a total cost for each day, including the trainer and the people to be trained, and the total training dollar value for that scenario. Again, you can see that these are orange background slides, so there are formulas back behind those that will change if I change any of the values on the way in. So again, we have cost of the trainer, cost of the training group, temp salaries, the total cost per day, and the total cost for this scenario. Moving on. We are dealing with whether our risk and training capacity has been exceeded. So again, in our notes section, we're going to identify whether we've exceeded the training capacity. And you can see as we go through here that because we have the capacity of 40 students, we have not exceeded any of the training capacities. We have a section called Rescheduling of Untrained Employees. And again, we look at the details by day. So for the 3 days of training, we have 0 and 0. And untrained employees worst case scenario, you can see that if we can't reschedule those, we end up with 3 untrained employees, worst case scenario. To answer question 3, so again, question 3, cost of training the employees. This again is going to be the calculation. We have 33 employees times the $200 temp fee times 6 equals $6,600 per session as an example. So again, the calculations are included up above. In scenario 4, we've identified what it's going to cost us in terms of mitigation for bringing the trainer in a day early. So again, we're dealing with the cost of the trainer, and we're dealing with the cost of the temps per temp. So again, we have our cost of $200 per temp times 40, which will give us our value Y. We're going to end up calculating what the probability is, again by dividing those numbers together, and give us the percentage that it would have to happen in order to cost justify this mitigation scenario and the extra $1,000 a day that we're spending. In scenario for question 5, we've now switched to a 40-40-20 scenario. And again, we're going to run the same model. We have day 1, day 2, day 3, and day 4. Again, you are going to have notes per section, totals for the session. And as we walk through here, again, you're going to have the same model that we had before. We're going to have employees to be trained, we're going to have employees scheduled, employees to be trained. We're going to deal with rescheduled employees. You can see here that as we go through the day, 40, 40, 20, we can't actually increase the employees trained on this day because we are maxed. Again, we will have the scenario for 40, 40, and 20. We are also going to deal with net employees trained per day. So again, you can see here that we have 39 on the first day when we take into account the projected absenteeism. That's covered here in this section. And again, that changes per day, and then we have a mitigation number that we will actually train them in some alternate format, and again, you will comment on these beside that. Again, the calculations are the same as before, where we identify in this case the cost of the trainer. For the day one, we have the cost of training for the first day of 40 students, which includes the training cost and the cost of replacements. And that's going to total $8,800 in this case, $9,000 and $5,000, and we're also going to give the total for that training scenario. So you can see that we've included our total cost per day and our total cost for this scenario. Again, for this scenario, you are going to include your information on training capacity exceeded, yes or no. Okay, that's hand keyed in. We have whether we have rescheduled any untrained employees and the risk for untrained employees worst case scenario. So again, we're going to include notes as to what we are doing with this. We've included the values. We've done the maximum risk. And again, that's how we complete scenario 4. When we come down to question 6, the point of question 6 is to take the question that says, in the case of a failure of our server environment where we cannot hit the server to do our training, what kind of mitigation or what kind of management are we going to have for that case? And again, we've talked about the 4 different types of risk management. We're going to take a scenario for avoiding it. I want you to write down what you believe is a viable solution for avoiding the fact that a server may crash. I want you to deal with how you would mitigate it if it does crash. I want you to look at and write down what you believe is a viable alternative for transferring that risk to somebody else, and what is the consequence of accepting the risk. So again, you are going to write up an answer for each one of those. And here is a sample. So in the case of avoid, we could use an alternate format for training material. Again, the trainer uses a USB stick to present the material and give copies to each of the students so they can continue running. So again, that would avoid the fact that the server crashes that we're running our training from. So that's it. We have just covered the requirements for the 6 questions in the Risk Management Lab. If you have any questions, please feel free to email